Hey, how's it going? And today I'm going to show you how to create a trigger device that displays a custom image all in verse code. There's a little twist on this where I had to put in a cancelable so that we make a subscription and have to cancel it. So I'll show you what this looks like. I tried to make this as simple as possible and then I got a little sidetracked with the subscription, but I'll show you here. So if we come into Fortnite here and I go start, all this is going to do is there's a trigger device here, right? There's just a verse device and a trigger device, and I'm spawned in. And when I go over that trigger, a custom message will display. And I'm not removing the widget, I'm just turning the visibility off or on. So what'll happen is when I go over that trigger, my custom message comes up, right? And I can still move, and then if I go back over the trigger, it goes away. So it's a message, a custom message that is displaying off of the trigger. Now the little catch was since this is being triggered off of a trigger device, we had to cancel the subscription that made this happen. So this will keep going for the rest of the game. But the subscription that initially made this happen has now been canceled. So if we do this again real fast, I'll show you. Keep an eye in the upper left hand corner. So we're going to go start because I have a bunch of print strings built in here. And you'll see as soon as I go over that trigger, you're going to see where it says subscription canceled. So look, see that? We created the UI, but then we turned around and canceled the subscription that created this. Because we only want to create the UI one time, so we create a subscription to create the UI, and then we have to turn around and cancel that subscription so it doesn't keep creating the UI. So we're not removing the widget or anything. But this is really cool. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible, but I don't know, sometimes it gets a little murky. So anyway, let's look at the scene. We've just got a trigger device and a verse device, and the rest of this is all in code. And then I also imported a custom image, which is just a JPEG that's 800 by 600. And the rest of this is in the code. So let's take a look at this now. Okay, so when we bring in a custom asset, we have to add this module here, verse.org assets. And then what I created here is I've done tutorials about this in the past. I'll put a link in the description to it. But we create an array of what they call cancellables, and this allows us to cancel subscriptions that we make. And then I just create an index value of 0. This represents essentially my player. And then I create my custom image here, which is my project H is my folder here. If I click here under assets here, you'll see when you bring in an image, it's called image4 and it's a texture. So you'll see that here. So we put the name of the folder the texture is in, and it's called image4, and I just call it my image. And then we create a text block. And then I have a logic variable that's called toggle. And then I have an overlay that's going to be my UI. And then here we have an editable for our trigger device. And so what happens is basically two methods here. There's one called toggle visible, and that's down here. And essentially this is just a toggle switch. So every time the player goes over the switch, it sets the visibility of the widget from hidden to visible, hidden to visible. And then we have a second function here called initialize UI. And here it takes in an option, and we have to do all this stuff here. I put down kind of an explanation of what things do, that the agent comes in as in an option container, then we have to unpack it, assign it to this agent, then we have to cast from the agent to the player type. Once we have the player type, we can get the player UI, and those are all things that can fail, so we have to put them in an if statement. But once we have that, then we can create my UI here. We call down here to create my UI, and it's just an overlay, and we just have one slot. And we have my displayed image in there. You have to set it up exactly like this. Default image equals my image, which is right up here, right? The texture that we've imported. And then we set the desired size on a vector 2 to 800 by 600. And that's a texture block. And then we have a slot, an array for our overlay slot. And we have horizontal alignment, vertical alignment. And then here we push down 40 from the top, but this value could be adjusted if you want that adjusted. And then what happens is when we call create my widget, it sends back a reference to our overlay. And then once we have that, we can get the player UI, add a widget, and we essentially add the overlay. And as soon as that's created, then what we do is we cancel our subscription, because every time the player goes over this trigger, if we don't cancel that subscription, it would be calling initialize UI every single time. So we want that subscription initially, but once it's created the UI, we don't want it called every time. So I was thinking of like how I could just do an if-else statement to get out of this, but I thought, you know, what we really need to do is just cancel the subscription. Subscribe just once, and then once we get what we want, we cancel the subscription. So I realized the importance of cancelable. We create the subscriptions, but then sometimes we need to cancel them so they don't keep doing what we don't want them to do. We wanted it to create the UI, but now we don't want it to do that anymore. When I set this up initially, I didn't have that cancelable in there, and then what I was doing is the message was never leaving the screen because it kept adding the widget all the time. So anyway, then we create this cancel subscription here. Actually, right here at the top, we have these two events, and what we do is this array is called subs, and then we insert the index value, which is going to be our player at 0. And here we've got a reference to this whole event here, the subscription essentially, and we put that into the array called new array, and then we have to reassign it to subs. So you just have to do it this way, is all I can say. Otherwise it won't work. And so whenever we amend an array, we have to reset the original array. And then down here we can then reference that. So then when we call here, once we've created the UI, we want to cancel this subscription that we did up here, right up here. So then what we do is we call here right after it's been created and cancel that subscription. And that's why it says subscription canceled. So we've already pulled the agent out of the container, this agent, so we can call it with this agent variable, send it over here, and then what we can do is just reference that. Subs index 0, which is going to be our player, and if it's found agent, then cancel that. Then we use this method here to cancel the subscription. So this cancels the subscription. So basically we create the UI one time, and then this whole thing is canceled. This subscription is canceled. This toggle visible isn't canceled, so then we can keep going back and forth over the trigger. So anyway, that's all I had for today. I hope you found this helpful. I'm trying to just put this all on the screen so you can see it. So this is the first half, and then this is the second half here. So anyway, take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.